Hey guys, in this video I'll show you how to turn a flat floor plan into something with texture and depth in Photoshop. I use this a lot when I want more character in a drawing, but I don't want my CAD file getting heavier, so let's get into it. So today I'm working with the floor plan of the Brazilian Pavilion from the Biennale. I drew it in Vectorworks. That's just what I'm used to, but use whatever software works best for you. Now, one thing I always keep in mind while drawing, areas like grass, paths, paving, I don't fill those with color, so just the outlines since the texture comes later in Photoshop, because that's the fun part. So once the drawing is done, entourage and shadows and everything, I go ahead and export it for Photoshop. But before I do that, I turn off everything that's just atmospheric, so basically everything that's not technical. I bring that back later, but for now I leave it off and then I export the drawing as a standard PDF. So now when I import the PDF into Photoshop, this window pops up. I just select Media Box here and click OK. Next thing, and this one's important, I link my plan back to the source file by right-clicking the plan layer and selecting Relink to File. That's really useful because now if I go change something in my plan back in Vectorworks, I just save it as a PDF again and the file in Photoshop updates on its own and I don't have to touch anything else. Okay, so first I figure out which areas are gonna get a texture later. So with the plan layer active, I'm selecting those areas using the magic wand tool. I'm going category by category, so grass areas first, then paved surfaces, that kind of thing. To select multiple areas at once, I click this button up in the top left and every area I click after that just gets added to my selection. Once I'm done selecting, I click the layer mask icon and I repeat that for every area, which matters because these masks become my templates later and that makes the whole texturing process so much easier. And by the way, if you want to go deeper into layer masks and what they can do, I made a whole video on that, so feel free to check that out, the link's right here. Okay, now I've picked out all the surfaces that are gonna get a texture, so now we get to the fun part. I've already chosen the textures I want to use, from really fine to pretty rough, so I've got different levels of detail for different areas. By the way, you can find textures like these on a bunch of different asset websites or just search for them on Pinterest. Just make sure the image quality is good and ideally they are seamlessly tileable. I'll show you what it means in a second. Okay, let's start with the outer surface. I want this one to stay pretty understated, so I'm going with a fairly uniform texture. The size isn't quite right yet, so I'm extending it a bit. I just duplicate it and place the copies edge to edge. Now I'm positioning the texture over the surface so it covers it completely. Then I select the mask I made earlier and the texture gets cropped to fit automatically. I repeat that for every other surface until I'm happy with it, and that gives me a solid base for the next more detailed step. Here I'm layering two textures on top of each other, so I switch their blend mode to multiply. You can also play with the opacity as you go, depending on whether you want to emphasize certain areas more. So I'm pretty happy with the base textures at this point, so let's move on to layering. The goal here is basically to break up the uniformity and bring it in a bit more irregularity, which I'm doing mostly around the corners and edges. It's basically the same steps as before. I pick a texture that's a bit more irregular or rough, scale it down a little, then position it and mask it. Now I'm blending the edges using a soft brush, painting with black while the mask is selected, and as you can see, this already adds a really nice sense of depth to the image. Now it's time for the planting, in my case trees, but you can also add shrubs, smaller plants, whatever kind of vegetation you need. There's two ways to handle this. You can either add the trees directly in your CAD drawing, or like I'm doing here, add them in Photoshop using brushes. If you go the brush route and want to use your own plants, just export them as PDFs with a white background, import them into Photoshop, then go to Edit and select Set Brush and it's ready. So now I've placed all my trees, and now I'm updating the plan with the details I hid earlier, the entourage elements, labels, and that kind of thing. I'm also turning off the boundary lines in Vectorworks for the areas I textured in Photoshop, so the textures blend into each other more smoothly. The last step is some refinement. Along this path here, for example, I wanted two textures to blend together, so I click the mask and use a soft brush with low opacity, painting black to make the textures less visible or white to bring it back. And that's it. We've got a textured plan, and depending on the scale, you can push the details further or keep it a bit more stylized, whatever fits. If you want to see more of this kind of process, I've got a video on layer masks linked right here. That one goes a bit deeper into a technique I use a lot in this workflow. And if you found this useful, subscribing helps a lot. I'm working on more videos like this one. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.